The organisers of the Manx Grand Prix races are saddened to confirm that Ian Bainbridge, 69, from Barnard Castle, was killed in an accident during the second qualifying session for the 2023 event. The accident occurred on the exit of Kirkmichael Village on Ian's first lap of the session. Ian made his mountain course debut in 2005 and had been a regular competitor in the classic racing classes ever since, only missing the Manx Grand Prix on 2 occasions in that time. His best performance came in the 2010 Classic Senior Manx Grand Prix when he finished in 8th place. The Manx Grand Prix pass on their deepest sympathies to Ian's family, loved ones and friends. The episode you're about to see was recorded prior to this news. Initially called the Amateur TT, the popularity of the September races continued to grow. In fact, by 1928 there were so many entrants they had to split the 350s and 500s, giving us the junior and senior format we're familiar with today. Amateur status was studiously adhered to. Even your crew had to prove that they didn't work in the motorcycle trade. Rumours rumbled around this paddock in 1929 that a few riders had accepted more than favours, and eventually a controversial letter was printed in the Isle of Man Times. The allegation was that a number of riders had accepted payment to use a particular brand of oil in the races here. The stewards were questioned and agreed that the rules seemed ambiguous, and so they just let it happen. It absolutely kicked off. 30 riders ended up being suspended, including the winner of the 1929 senior, Jay Potts, on his Grindley Peerless. The race win was handed to next best man, E.N. Lee, on the Velocet, which, when you add that to his win on the Norton in the 350 class, gave us our first Manx double win. So the bigger picture for the amateur TT looked bleak. In fact, the ACU refused the 1930 application for the races and suggested to the Manx Motorcycle Club that they revisit their application. They did exactly that and stipulated a couple of fresh rules that you had to adhere to if you wanted to race here in the amateur TT. The first of which was that you had to have lived for at least 5 years in either Great Britain, the Irish Free State, Northern Ireland, the Isle of Man or Jersey. The second was that you couldn't have competed in an international race between 1920 and 1930. These rules made everybody happy, and it was also the year that the races were changed from being called the Amateur TT to actually being called the Manx Grand Prix. That's today's history lesson over with. Welcome to day 3 of the centenary Manx Grand Prix. Two of the most popular faces in the paddock at the Manx Grand Prix this week, Lee, Glenn, Johnston and Nathan Harrison. A little bit of changing of the guard going on with the prettiest bike that we've got here.
Is that like a polite term of you're old and no use anymore?
Well, you said it, not me. You definitely said that. We've come to find out a couple of things. One, we wanted to just get a little bit closer to this bike, which is absolutely stunning. And two, find out how this came about, how this name is on this bike and not your name. And how you've helped Nathan on the journey to the start line on, I'm going to say it again, the prettiest bike in the paddock. Where did it start?
Actually just with a phone call, not that crazy long ago. So obviously with Nathan being a factory Honda rider, he had no option other than to ride a Honda, and there's not a lot of them floating about because everyone seems to be on a ZXR, so it sort of fell into place quite easily. We wanted to get him on the bike, and the strange thing with Nathan being quite young, he knows such a lot about, you know, because obviously grown up, standing up there at 6, 8, 10-year-old, you know what I mean, watching. I'm
just going to jump in before you carry on. 1994, the RC45. Let's all state our ages in 94. I'll go first. I was 14.
I was 6.
-2.
He was still a bad thought.
Shall we carry on?
Yeah, so it happened that way, and really easily we said, you know, what we wanted to do. And we got a test on the bikes pretty quickly, and we're here now. So
Cadwell?
Yeah. So which was good really, because we didn't have a lot of time. But yeah, you can see yourself, they're absolutely amazing looking.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm happy that he's on them. As much as it kills me saying it, I am happy. He's had a tough year, and yeah, glad to see him.
Last year, you were on this bike. It's just been repainted and reworked. Is this the one that I've seen come together on your YouTube channel?
Yeah. So this is the actual chassis, but then everything outside of that is there's new forks, new shock, wheels, brakes, exhausts, bodywork. Yeah, there's
everything.
There's quite a lot. Yeah, the bike is quite a lot different. Rear sets, obviously, with Nathan's gear change, we had to get special rear sets and stuff made by Horace. They also made new yokes, new thumb brake system. So yeah, he is hard work. Do you know what I mean? I thought it was going to be easy, but.
And your classic superbike race experience here is all ZXR based, isn't it?
Yeah, I've only done one classic superbike race. That was last year.
Yeah.
I was on a Kawasaki 750. Yeah.
So you've got no real kind of benchmark of what constitutes a good or bad RC45?
No, like the first time I sat on the RC45 was last week at Cadwell Park, but I don't think you really need to like do anything other than look at it to see how good it is.
Stunning,
yeah, you know what I mean. It's a work of art. I don't think you're going to get many RC45s that are better than that.
Have you been doing your homework with Joey Dunlop wins on the Castrol and Jim Moody? Jim Moody ran a 118 here, didn't he? I think in 99 on an RC45.
99, he did 124.
124, there you go.
Yeah.
So you have been doing your homework.
I have,
been doing homework.
Yeah, he's the fastest man. I think Steve Hislop did 124 as well, but that was in practice. So.
Feeling any of the pressure to live up to any of that?
We'll see. I don't like to boast about things, but we'll see. We'll see how it comes. We'll see how it comes about. Keep it quiet, and you never know. Hopefully, I might be the fastest RC45 rider. We'll see.
It is a beautiful looking thing, though, isn't it? I know I've said it twice already, but
yeah, if we could win the race on looks,
yeah.
Bike, not rider looks, we would. I think we would have. And even like we got, obviously, I put a bit of work into the design and got his leathers and everything to see him, and yeah, it's supposed to be me in them leathers.
But fortunately for me, it's me.
Yeah.
Well, I was on the line doing radio with Kinners and Chris Palmer the other night, and the gearing on this thing compared to everything else in the classic superbike class. First gear you were still hanging on to at the exit for pit lane, and everything else was into second and third.
Yeah, it's not the gearing as a whole. It's just first gear.
Yeah.
Like on these is renowned to be really tall. Because like quite a few years ago, I rode it at Cadwell, or not Cadwell, Scarborough, and I think I got into about third gear. You know what I mean? It does something like 90 or nearly 100 mile an hour in first gear. So the first gear is really long.
What does that do with your reference points for the gearing that you'll know, and you from last year as well, with other bikes that you've ridden here? Do you have to completely recalibrate everything?
Yeah, it's funny, on that first lap, obviously I did miss the TT, so everything was like different.
Fresh.
But yeah, exactly. But I went into Solby Bridge and went into second, and I come out, I was like, buh, 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 buh. But I was like, then I went out on the second bike and went into first, and it was like screaming, do you know what I mean? So it's just getting used to that. So I know now that you actually, on a modern bike, you'd never use first in certain places, you use first on this, but obviously it's a completely different animal.
Any hopes? We'll start with your hopes for his result in the classic superbike race.
I think if he's got any thankfulness in him, he has to win. Any gratitude at all.
Stick it on the top.
No, honestly, I think the thing people forget is all these ZXRs have been coming for a long time and developing. We come last year with a bike that really wasn't ready. We've we've put a lot of work into the bike, but still this is like another learning. Yeah, obviously anything can happen here, anything can break down, but I believe that with Nathan's talent and the job the guys have done, hopefully it would be a nice reward for the boss, who's obviously paid for all this, to get a nice result, and for Nathan obviously after having quite a tough year.
Yeah. What about you, Nathan?
Like I said, I don't like to give away my goals.
I'm getting a quietly confident vibe at the minute. I don't know about anybody else.
Every racer wants to win, don't they? Like you say, last year I got a good result on the Kawasaki. That, like Lee said, that's been coming year after year. But like you say, the job that these guys have put in, I'd love nothing more than getting a good result. I think the bike's capable. We've only done 2 laps so far, and we've got places to go with it.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, I'd love nothing more than getting a good result for myself and the team.
Wow. Well, let's finish by talking about how it looks again on looks alone. I think you both deserve it. So, best of luck to both of you, and nicely done for letting Nathan ride your bike.
Thanks, Lee.
There's something about seeing Michael Dunlop push his bike to the front of the queue for the start of a session when you know he just means business. But to be fair, after seeing him set off tonight, I took some time to reflect on probably nearly 20 years of covering him doing exactly that, where I've realised I don't think I've ever seen him mean anything but business. Him on any bike at the start of any session means business, and that's exactly what he meant tonight. His single lap on the big 750 S-Rad at 124.3 miles an hour was fast enough to top the Classic Superbike session. Dean Harrison made some changes from the Sunday session where he told me that he needed to adjust the front end more than anything else on that bike. Ended up being new fork springs to stiffen the front up and then a softer shock to just calm things out and bring things into line between front and back. He also added 2 teeth to the back end of that 916 to allow him to make use of all 6 gears rather than the 5 that he was stuck with on Friday. That meant he finished second fastest, this many miles an hour behind Dean, with Rob Hodson about that many miles an hour behind Davo. A fascinating session for me, that Classic Superbike class, one where Mike Brown failed to put in a full lap again on that sweet looking YZF 750. Hopefully it can back up those looks with a lap time later this week. In the senior class, there's not much to separate the top 4 or 5 at all. Tom Robinson topped the timesheets with a 118. For me, what was more impressive was Jamie Williams' stand-in start lap of 117 that put him in 4th place. 2 other things to note in this evening's session before it was cut short with about 25 minutes to go. One of them is a little bit personal. For me, it's my fanboy status of Mick O'Sweeney that I'm declaring now. He's a tough looking fella. He's pushed hard to get back out on the bikes this week. Seeing him go out in the senior classic this evening with no hump on his leathers, he looked the part. He's got those eyes that tell you he's a tough guy, but I've spoken to him a couple of times and he could talk the birds out of the trees. I'm a Mick O'Sweeney fan and I don't mind admitting it. The other interesting thing to see was Michael Dunlop jumping off that big 750 S-Rad and straight onto the 250. He was fairly cautious before he set off on that 250, and he didn't mind telling us when we were on Manx radio that he'd just read the road and let the bike tell him if he was supposed to finish that lap or not. The kind of nuances of 252 strokes and air temperature and pressure and the right time of the day and all of these things all play their part when it comes to getting the best lap out of a 250, and nobody really knows those bikes better than him. Jeopardy in the lightweight class, that's what I'm going to call it. Nobody's really had a chance to match that 112 mile an hour lap from Ian Locker on the first night. Still nothing from Jim Hines, nothing from Michael Dunlop. Nobody's been able to string a full lap together and challenge Ian's time. I'm looking forward to seeing how that race comes together. I'm grateful to the weatherman today. It was really nice to be stood in the fantastically privileged position that I get to stand in when the roads are closed. I can go in front of the barrier where the guys that are commentating get to stand. Nobody else can go there. Lucky old me, I get to stand there. What that gives me is the best view of the guys going off from the start line, but also when I watch them down the road, I get to turn, and tonight I saw a full grandstand full of people. It was one of those beautiful Manx moments that will genuinely stay with me forever. Hopefully the weather will hang around tomorrow and we'll get exactly the same again. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to follow us across all of our social channels. We are at Manx Grand Prix, and if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button for updates as soon as we've got them.